Hi everybody, it's Oksana, and today I want to show you how to make this wire wrapped cabochon pendant. And this is a woven bezel, so I did some wire weaving on the sides here. And I do have quite a few videos on how to make a pendant with a woven bezel like this, but this is kind of my ultimate video, I guess, because as I've done this over the years, I've picked up some tricks, I guess, that make it a little easier. So hopefully this video will be the best one yet on how to do this. And also I try to make the back of this kind of somewhat pretty as well. So if you want to see how to make this, then just keep watching. So I'm starting out with 3 pieces of 20 gauge round, dead soft copper wire. And you can just buy it various places online, but mine is from Rio Grande. And then to weave, I know you can't see the wording here, but I'm going to be using this. It's a 26 gauge wire, also from Rio Grande, also round, dead soft copper. You don't have to use copper. You can use other types as well, like sterling silver, for example. And I actually recommend 28 if you are starting out, because it's going to be a little thinner and softer and easier to get a nice, neat, tight weave with a 28. But if you've been doing it for a while and you want it to go a little faster, then 26, because it's a thicker wire, you know, it takes more room, so it goes a little faster. Like the same amount of wraps end up being a little wider, so it's a little quicker to work with. But when I first started, I had a really hard time at 26, and my weaves were super sloppy. So then I went down to 28, and that made a world of difference. And then after I've been doing it for a while, I tried 26 again, and because I was so used to weaving, it ended up working fine for me. So decide what you want to use depending on, you know, how comfortable you feel with your weaving. So this is 8 inches, and then my stone is about 1 inch. So your stone might be different. What I like to do is, if I have these wires here going around, just roughly around my stone, then I'm left with a piece that is just like about 1.5 stones in length, you know what I mean? So that this will be enough to make the bail, and it'll be enough to secure the back of the stone. So because your stone will be different, so 8 inches is not like a universal measure for this pendant. Do it depending on what your stone is. So what you want to do is first decide how many wires you need. So I'm using 3 because, as you can see, my stone is quite thin. So 3 wires, especially once I have the weaving on them, they're going to be like a little bit spread out, and they're going to cover the edge of my stone, the entire edge. This is called a cabochon. It is flat on one side, and then it is domed. See how it like goes up and gets smaller, and so that's what I mean. It's domed, so that if we have our bezel, which is what I'm making, the frame that goes around, kind of on the edge, and then it goes to right here, this portion is, you know, smaller than down here because it goes out. This is not like the best example of a domed one because it's just slightly domed. Some of them are, you know, way more noticeable, like going down. This does have a little bit of a straight edge here, but it is still, you know, a little bit domed, so it'll work well for, you know, having the frame go right here, and this part is smaller, so the stone won't be able to come through. But if you have a stone that just has a straight edge up, and then instead of being domed, it's just super flat all the way across the top, that might be a little tougher to secure. You can still do it, but you just have to make sure to make your frame nice and small so that your stone doesn't pop through the front of it. So anyways, what you want to do is figure out the central part here of your wires. So if I bend this, this is gonna, go around my stone. So I'm holding here, just kind of estimate. And I'm separating my 3 wires. And you can use a little clip to hold the 3 of them together. There's something called a spring clamp that you can get from a hardware store. But you don't have to, and so I'm just going to hold them with my fingers because it's only 3 wires. If you have a really tall stone, you might want to use 4 or 5 wires. So I'm taking my 26 gauge wire, and I'm putting it through here, and I'm holding this little tail of it, and I'm starting my weave. So this is how I like to start them all, just a little kind of loop around that bottom wire just to get it started. And I have some tutorials on different weaves. This is something that varies a lot, and you can just do whatever you like to get, different looks to your stone, to your pendant. So what I'm going to do is one that's relatively quick, so that I can just move this along. And I'm going to take this wire from the back, which is where it is now because I bent it to the back like this. And I'm bringing it back to the front, and I'm bringing it right here through this gap between the top 2 wires. Like this. And now I'm bringing it down, back up, and repeating that again through these 2 wires. So what that looks like is 2 little wraps around the bottom 2 wires. That's another way you can think about it, is wind it 2 times around the bottom 2 wires. And now bring it back up and do that around the top 2. So all the way up around the top 2 twice. So now, oh, mine crossed over. Okay, so now it looks like 2 wraps around the top 2 wires. And then you could go back down and do the bottom 2 again and repeat that. Bottom 2, top 2, bottom 2, top 2, and it looks like a little zigzag that goes like this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to add one little extra thing, and I'm going to make 1 wrap around the top wire, like this. And then I'm going to go down by 2, so wrapping around the top 2, twice, wrapping around the bottom 2, twice. And now I'm going to make that same 1 little loop on the bottom here. So, twice around 2, twice around 2, 1 little loop, 2, 2, 1 little loop, like that. And now we would go back up by 2s. So that's the pattern that I'm going to do. Feel free to do your own. That's one that I'm going to do. And there is one little extra step that I want to show you guys that I'm going to do. So you want this to be long enough to go around your stone. So it starts like this, right? It's this little frame, and it's going to go all the way around and then up the other side. And once you have it nice and long, you can go ahead and bend it to see if you're getting close, because you don't want it to be such a big frame that your stone pops out of it. You do want it to be slightly smaller than your stone. So you can start checking, but one thing you want to keep in mind as you're doing this is when you get roughly to this edge here, so when you've woven enough that it reaches here, and then here, and here, in those 3 spots, there's a little extra step that we are going to do. So I'm going to try and very quickly get to that spot. So that I can show you that little extra step there. And that little extra step is going to help us secure the cabochon when we are done with this frame. I used to do it in a different manner in my past videos, but since I came up with this, I think it makes it a little easier. Alright, so I'm on the bottom part here. I'm just going to go back up, and I'm going to do that. And the space that you want to do it at is the outer part. So this is going to be my frame going around the stone, and here I am at the center of the side. I want to do it on this outer edge here, not in here, but here. So my wire is here at the top, and I'm about to make that one little single loop in this top wire, go around it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put 2 of my fingers here. I'm going to wrap this wire around them. As I make my top loop. See what I mean? So basically I'm making that top loop, but I'm leaving some slack. And the easiest way for me to do that is just to wrap it around something like my fingers. You might, wrap it around like a tool or something, whatever you want. But this is easiest for me. So then you want to continue with your pattern. So before I take my finger out of there, I'm going to continue for a little bit just to make sure that that is all like not going to pull through. And then I'm just going to kind of close this up because it was like a loop. Now I have this loop here. And then you can just kind of make it stick straight up if you want. So when you're done, we're going to have this weave, this bezel that's going to go around our stone, and it's going to have one here on the side of our stone, one here on the bottom, and one here on the other side. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to finish that up, finish this weaving, because I'm just going to do literally the same thing that I've been doing. And then I will come back to show you guys what to do next. Alright, so mine's done. And my favorite way to get this shape nicely around your stone is to put your stone down on a flat surface, to go ahead and bend the wires here that are at the end of your frame that are going to be for your bail. Bend them kind of outwards. Put it down around your stone and just kind of press down, because this is on a flat surface. Obviously here I'm just holding in the air for you, but you want to do it like on a table or something, and just kind of press and shape it around your stone to make a nice frame. And then once you've made that frame, make sure, like my stone can't pop through it because the frame is smaller than the stone, just slightly smaller. And then if you look on the back here, my stone kind of sits in this frame, like in a little basket. Obviously, like if I tilt it sideways, it can go through, but once we secure it, it's going to be sitting flat like this, and so it won't be able to pop through. And mine is a teardrop shape, so these just come to a point here. If you have an oval, these would just kind of go around the edge of your oval, and then you would just bend them instead of coming to a point here. So it doesn't have to be a teardrop shape. You can do other shapes of stones. The only ones that might be hard to do is like a rectangle or a square, just because it might be a little hard to bend the frame perfectly around it. It is possible, but I probably wouldn't do a square as like your first stone, if you haven't done this before. But if you've been doing it for a long time and you want to try a square or a rectangle, then it is feasible for those as well. So now that we have the perfect shape and size, what we're going to do, and this is just one option here, but this is what I like to do. I like to take these inner wires. You've probably seen me do this a lot, like all my pieces. I like to take these inner wires and crisscross them, and then bend them towards the back and crisscross them again, like this. And what that does is it closes up my frame. I'm going to use my pliers. These are my Xuron pliers. I have a video on all my tools if you're interested in the tools that I use. And I'm just going to kind of straighten these a little bit. just because they weren't very even. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take, I have 2 and 2 wires here. 2 here and 2 here. Obviously, mine wasn't very centered because this edge is taller, but that's okay, it doesn't matter. So there's this little tail end. When we first started our weave, you can cut that. At any point, you could have cut that. But if you haven't, then cut it now. That was from the very start when I had that little tail. But the wire that we were weaving with, it's still here. It's still on my spool. I'm not cutting that. I'm still using it. So you can either have these close together, or you can separate them like I have into 2 and 2 like this. The only tricky thing, if you separate them into 2 and 2, is that keeping that spacing. They might start to kind of get closer. What you have to work on is your weaving, not pulling too hard, not pulling them together. So if you have a tough time with that, then I probably wouldn't separate them out. I'm just going to do this so that it's easy for me to get my weaving wire in here. So you can just have them close together, and then you would just have 4 wires all together. I have quite a few weaves that you can do around 4 wires. You can do something similar to this. If you want to kind of keep it consistent, you can just do 2, 2, and 2, kind of going down and up like a little zigzag, whatever you want. You don't have to do what I'm about to show you. This is just one optional weave. So I have my wire. It's coming out the back here from this weave. I'm going to bring it around this top wire like this. Let me try to get closer here. So, one little loop around the very top wire. Bringing it down across these 2 wires right here. Bringing it up in between again and towards the front. Like that. And now that I have it going towards the front, what I want to do is I want to put it in this big gap and bring it towards the back. And then bring it up and in between these 2 wires. Alright, just like this. And now we're kind of repeating because we started with a little loop around this top wire, so this is kind of a repeat, but on the bottom, like the opposite. Bringing it up around both, down, in between, and up. So it makes a little loop just around this top one. And now I'm bringing it to the back through this big giant gap here. Okay? So another way to think of it, one little loop around the top wire, one loop around both top wires. Bring it in between them and make one little loop around the bottom of the 2 top wires. Bring it to the back through this gap. Bring it all the way down and make a little loop around the bottom wire. Up around both bottom wires, in between them, and up to make a single loop around the top of the bottom 2 wires. Now it's in this big gap. Whenever it is going from these 2 up to these 2, you don't want it to go up like this, up the front. You want it to go in this, big gap and go up the back. It's always coming from the back. And it's going up and over the wire. So let me zoom in now so that you can see, but this is the pattern that I've been doing. This is what I'm going to keep repeating until it's tall enough to be the bail of my pendant. Once it's tall enough where I can bend it around and it forms the bail, I'm going to stop and I'm going to show you what to do next. When I finish weaving my bail, when it's tall enough, what I like to do is I like to wrap a few times around a single wire. So I like to end on a single wrap. This way, there's less of a chance that it's going to unravel. And then you trim it, and you take your pliers and you take that little end, you can pinch it down. Kind of try to round it around the wire here so it doesn't stick up. Now what I like to do is, if your weave is all nice and tight, if it's not, push it down so that it is, but if it's all set, I like to take these two wires on each side and I like to bend them this way, because when we bend this into our bail, our weave might start to separate and move, and if these are bent outwards, the weave can't get wider, and so we can't move down onto these wires. They're preventing that. You can use a tool like this, which is called bail making pliers, or you can just freehand it with your hands or use like a pencil or something. But basically, you take your bail and you bend it around to give it that shape of bail. And then you can unbend the wires that I had bent to separate them. That's not a big deal. You don't need them to stay that way, so we can just bend them out of the way for now. And then I did one other quick thing I want to show you, just to give you an option, because I feel like a lot of my bales, I have these wires crisscrossing in the front and going to the back. So here's another way to do it. So I uncrisscrossed them. I brought them back to the front. So here's this wire going up the side, and here it is. It was originally crossed over onto that side, but I uncrossed it. You don't have to do that, but just to show you another option if you don't want to, crisscross them all the time. Instead of doing it across, now that our frame is secure and we have our weave here, because the crisscross was originally kind of holding this together and preventing it from, getting too wide for our stone. But now that we have our bail and everything's all set, these wires no longer hold anything together, so you can do anything you want with them. So I am just bringing them to the back. So instead of them crossing over to the other side, they're now just going on their own side to the back, and that just makes these little bumps, I guess. And then you can kind of try to make sure that they look even and one is not taller than the other. And now what I'm going to do with these wires that are coming from the bail is I'm just going to temporarily move them out of my way like this. And I'm going to take my stone, I'm going to put it into my frame like this. I'm just pushing it a little bit because I want my frame not to be super flat. I want it to be kind of at an angle like this. So if yours got a little bit too flat, you can bend it a little bit at an angle, but you also don't want like a ton at an angle. You don't want it to go straight this way either, because then the stone won't rest like in a little basket. So what I'm going to do is I'm taking these wires here in the back. They're crossing over like this. So I am taking this first one, and I'm taking this little loop that I had going on here, and I'm wrapping it around like that. And after I wrap it a few times, so I'm wrapping two wires at the same time because this is two wires, then I'm going to cut it nice and short. I'm going to try to get the end of my wire to stay back here in the back so it can't poke out. So like that, this wire is attached now, and now I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. Just kind of working here with my frame, making sure it doesn't get discombobulated, so it still, fits my stone nicely. So just wrapping that around this wire. And the advantage of this, I used to do this slightly differently, where I would attach these using a completely separate wire, but having these little loops is nice because you don't have to find a place to stick a little wire through to attach. you kind of have that wire coming out of your weave already. So I just find that really handy. Now, we just have to find a way to attach these wires. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to wrap it around the both of them like this. So I'm crossing them over, wrapping it around the both of them, and then I'm wrapping it around just one of them. Because before I trim it off, I want these weaving wires to be wrapped around a single wire. That way they stay better and are less likely to unravel. So we're trimming that, using my pliers to tuck that away. And you can trim these little wire ends short, like so, and then take some round nose pliers and take these little ends and make a little loop. And I try to tuck that loop under like this so that it doesn't stick out or get in the way. And feel free to get creative. You can do all kinds of fun stuff on the back here. You can make little designs with your wire. Mine is just a very basic crisscross. You can do all kinds of fun stuff. So I'm just adjusting these a little bit. All right. So now my stone is secure. It's not going to pop out of this frame. The frame is too small. The only thing is one of these loops is a little bit higher than the other one, so I'm just going to try to fix that and get them to be a little bit more even. There we go. Like that. A little bit more even. So now all that's left to do is to finish these wires here on the back. The wires coming from the bail, so what we want to do with those wires is really you just secure them any way that you want. So I'm going to start with these inner two wires because this one is long enough to reach. So I'm going to cut them so they're the same length. And then you can either loop it around this way or you can loop it around the other way, which requires you to take this wire and tuck it under this other wire and then loop it around like this and close up that loop. Like that. So you can make all kinds of different little designs if you want. These wires. Here's what I have right now. Just gonna kind of make sure my frame didn't get bent out of shape. My stone is still secure in there. And then these two wires, you can just trim them. Or if you want to, cross them over somewhere and make a decorative kind of thing with them, you can do that. You can, bring them to the front, make loops with them. There's a lot of different things that you can do with them, but if you just want to get rid of them and have this be, as simple as it can, I am just going to cut them short, quite short, like that. Then I'm taking my round nose pliers and I'm taking these little wires and I'm making a loop, but as I'm making it, I'm tucking it under to hide that wire end. So at least one set of the wires you want to attach, like how I attach these so that your bail is, attached to something, but then the other set of wires, you can just, tuck them away So now, this is the back of my pendant. And you kind of mess around with it a little bit. Try to get that pattern to look all pretty. And then this is the front of my pendant. So that is it. That is a nice basic woven bezel wire wrapped cabochon pendant. So hopefully this is helpful to you. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.